So, Sunday Sounds of Dhamma program, as usual, we'll do about 10 minutes or so of guided meditation, and then I'll offer a Dharma talk, some sharing, and then we'll have a bit of time at the end there for reflections or questions or comments and sharing of blessings. So, for this morning's meditation, what I want to suggest is mindfulness of mind. So we'll settle first into the body, and then we're going to do an exercise, or you could say a form of applying our attention to the phenomena that is arising in the mind, aware of them as sensations that are arising from moment to moment, and doing our best to let them just arise and be present and cease without getting swept away or without getting into grasping and entanglement. So that's what we're going to try this morning, a little mindfulness of body and then mindfulness of mind. So you can begin by settling into your posture. I usually like to begin with just a bit of rocking of the body from side to side and from front to back. Just loosening up any tendency to lean in one direction, or perhaps loosening tension that you might be carrying. And then allowing the body to settle into a balanced, excuse me, balanced, upright position. Feeling the weight of the body on your seat equally from side to side. Relaxing the belly and really allowing the body to settle so we can enjoy being here right now for this moment. Nothing else to do. And slowly bringing the attention up the torso. Just aware of the bones of the spine, stacked one on top of the other. Feeling that alignment all the way up through the neck. Allowing the eyes to soften. Allowing the mouth to soften. Allowing the breath to come and go naturally. The breath is breathing the body according to its own rhythms. And having steadied the mind on the body, perhaps you can turn your attention to thoughts. Thoughts as mere sensations in the mind. Just like a sound or a smell, a thought has its beginning and its ending. And the mind is observing all of that, the sensations and the thoughts, just as they come, just as they go. Just staying curious about thoughts and perceptions as mere sensations in the mind. So that brings us to the end of the meditation. And if you have any thoughts or questions, reflections on that, we'll talk about that at the end. But right now, I'm going to move on into the Dharma talk. I'll begin, as always, with the homage to the Buddha and the Triple Gem. And if you know it, you're welcome to chant along. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Buddhang dhammang sanghang namasami. So today I would like to talk a little bit about the arising of insight. How is it that we can begin to have a lived experience of seeing the world in a new way, seeing the world in a more accurate and skillful way? And there are lots of different instructions related to this. But I want to focus very specifically on the question of volition or choice. What is our role in that, in choosing a path, choosing a practice that enables and supports insight? And the question of volition is appearing to be a big one in Buddhism these days, at least in Western Buddhism. The question of even whether volition is happening seems to be coming up. And I always find that quite interesting, because I don't think it's possible to perceive a path without a choice to be on that path. It doesn't just occur randomly. So as usual, I brought a story from the older texts of Buddhism called the suttas. And the particular sutta that I want to talk about today is a conversation, as many of them are. And it's a conversation of a man, a person, with Venerable Ananda. So some of you may know that Venerable Ananda was, for about 25 years, the Buddha's attendant, his assistant. And he walked around with the Buddha in India and memorized the teachings. It said that he had an incredibly precise and enduring memory, so that he could hear what the teachings were and then recite them later or ask questions about them later. But the sutta that we're looking at is one that probably happened after the Buddha's passing, because what you might notice also is in the suttas, they often open with, "Thus have I heard." That's the Venerable Ananda mentioning the fact that he is reciting something that was shared with him, not his own wisdom, but also the subsequent reciters. So that's how the teachings came down to us, that for century after century, people dedicated their lives to memorizing the teachings and passing them on to others. But then usually the next sentence is, and the Buddha was in such and such a place, or the Buddha was walking here. But in this sutta, what we have is a mention of where the Venerable Ananda was. And usually that would be a subtle indicator that this is something that happened after the Buddha's death. So what happens is that somebody is looking for the Venerable Ananda. It's this man, Dassama. Dassama is looking for the Venerable Ananda because he has a question he wants to ask. And he knows that Ananda knows the teachings well. So he's looking around for Venerable Ananda, and he finally finds him. And he says, he has this question. So I'm reading from Bhikkhu Bodhi's translation. Venerable Bhikkhu Bodhi, thank goodness for him. We share many blessings with him for making the teachings, the translations of the teachings accessible to so many people. And this is Middle Length Discourse number 52, for those of you who have an interest in looking up these kind of things. And so this Dassama approaches the Venerable Ananda and he says, is there any one thing that has been proclaimed by the Blessed One, the Buddha, who knows and sees, where if one abides in that thing, an unliberated mind becomes liberated? Understanding arises. So he's asking, just give me one teaching, right? Just give me one. That's all I can handle, or maybe that's all I need, right? Just give me one teaching. And it reminds me very much of one of my favorite koans, right? Which is where the monk approaches the teacher. So this is from ancient Chinese Buddhism, Tang Dynasty, China. And the monk approaches the teacher and says, what is the teaching of a lifetime? As in, just lay your best shot on me, right? So this is a precursor to that. So this would have happened, gosh, like about 1,000 years, maybe 1,200, 1,300 years earlier. Not that that makes it any more important necessarily, just for us to have as a frame of reference what we're talking about here. And this would have happened in India. And so the Venerable Ananda says, in fact, it happened at near the place where the Buddha had his last rains retreat, his last retreat before his death. And so Venerable Ananda says, yes, there is one thing. And so Dassama says, well, what's the one thing? Yeah. And Venerable Ananda says this. He says, secluded from sensual pleasures, secluded from unwholesome states, a monk, or I would say in general, a committed practitioner, enters into and abides in the first state of absorption, which is accompanied by applied thought and sustained thought with joy and pleasure. So now I'm adjusting Bhikkhu Bodhi's translations very slightly here. So if you don't like it, blame me, not him, actually. With joy and bliss born of seclusion. But so he's talking about entering into this state of concentration. So we come into a deeper state of settling the mind, clarifying the mind, and focusing the mind. And then he says, but then one considers and understands this, that this state of concentration is conditional and is volitionally produced. And whatever is conditional and volitional is subject to cessation, is impermanent. And if one is steady in that, then one ends the harmful states of mind. One can bring an end to the harmful states of mind by having that insight into impermanence and conditionality. So I want to really dig into this statement a little bit. So one thing here that is interesting is the idea of seclusion. What do we mean by seclusion? Usually we understand there to be two different types of seclusion. One kind of seclusion is bodily seclusion. Bodily seclusion means, in a very literal sense, kind of going to a quiet place where you can sit and meditate. That's one thing. But bodily seclusion also means this aspect of setting down certain kinds of stimulation, right? So for example, when we go on a meditation retreat, that's why we don't listen to music, usually. Or we might even stop reading books while we're on a meditation retreat, because we're setting down certain kinds of stimulation so that we can allow the mind to be more settled and more focused on itself at a low level of stimulation. How is it when things are more calm? So there's that aspect of the physical seclusion, and then there's the aspect of mental seclusion. Yeah. And mental seclusion perhaps is a bit more subtle. I would say mental seclusion has to do with our commitment to actually being present for our lives and not spending an inordinate amount of time fantasizing or being anxious about the future, or regretting and feeling anxious about the past. But really bringing the mind to a place of turning toward this moment, the body and mind of this moment, as being important enough for us to stay here. So there's the seclusion aspect, and then there is this way of concentrating the mind, and I'll talk a little bit more about that in a moment. But then there is this insight that comes. Concentration is a state that is conditional, meaning it only arises when the appropriate conditions are present. And when they're present, then it will arise. It's just that simple. But there's also the aspect of choice. It is a volitional state. So meditation is a choice. Even when we sit down, as we did a few moments ago, and say, okay, we're just going to observe what's coming and going, that is still volitional. Right? You've chosen to be still. You've chosen to point the attention toward the phenomena of the mind. You've chosen not to pick a particular aspect, but you're going to just look at what arises. All of that is choice. But even choice, and this is the key insight there, even the most beautiful, calm, clear, focused state of mind is impermanent. It is the nature of the mind to change. And I find it really a teaching that we need to hear again and again, particularly when we're committed to the path, particularly when we have perhaps some experience of feeling relaxation in the meditation or feeling concentrated in the meditation, then it's like, oh, but I should be able to make it stay. Right? And people can get very, very judgmental or very distraught or spend years trying to get back to a meditation that they had or an insight that came up. I myself did that many years ago. Felt that I was for very long striving to try to recreate some moment of experience that had happened, some very moving, very ground opening, mind opening moment. But the nature of the mind is change. And it is not our practice to try to achieve a fixed state of mind. That's the opposite of understanding. That's the opposite of wisdom. Wisdom knows that the mind changes and that we can have an influence and we must have an influence in order to learn that. That's what choice is about. That we think we know, but actually, without particular ways of approaching attention and how to use the attention, we actually don't know. There's actually so much of our lives, of our inner lived experience that we're missing. But this teaching requires a lot of courage. This teaching requires us to build up the courage to be present with everything, to be face to face with everything that arises in our lives, in our bodies and minds. Which is not to say that sometimes those things don't need to change. Right? In fact, if we think about the ethical precepts, that the precepts are one of the ways that the Buddha spoke about choice as well. That we sometimes observe our inner state, or we observe our speech, or we observe our action, and we say, oh, I could do better. Wholesome speech or wholesome actions or wholesome thoughts would have a little bit better result and would actually lead to a nicer experience for me too, right? But this courage to be present moment after moment and acknowledge what's here, acknowledge the reality of our lives, the truths of our lives, not one truth, but many truths. It takes a while. It takes a while to develop that. So we have this insight that it is impermanent and it is volitional. Meditation and any state of mind, no matter how beautiful, how wholesome, any state of body, no matter how beautiful, how wholesome, it will change. And so then the injunction is, or the exhortation is, abide in that. So just as I said, we need to be able to stay with it. But then what happens? Then there is this idea of this dropping off of the what's called the taints, or you could say the unskillful qualities of mind that arise out of delusion. And why would that be the case? So it's not because we learned that we are going to behave in a certain way, or that we, by force, said, I will be a saint. No. that tends to backfire, right? That really tends to create even more struggle. And this is another sort of pitfall that we can find in our practice, that when we might have a strong intention to lead a wholesome life or to be really committed to the path of meditation, we also sometimes can let that fall into a kind of inner struggle. No, it shouldn't be like this, or I shouldn't think like that, or I shouldn't have that feeling in my heart. But that's not how wisdom arises, actually. Not by fiat, not by choice. And so we see the limit of the choice also, right? That's part of the insight that's happening here. Because the way that the insight arises is by knowing the reality and seeing quite clearly how it actually works. Because when we do that, then we will make the choices that let go of suffering, that don't lead forward to suffering. We know how it works. As my dear, dear friend and teacher, Zenke Blanche Hartman, used to say, I've seen that train before, and I know where it goes, and I'm not getting on it. Okay? So we make different choices based on the insight that we've had, because eventually it doesn't make sense anymore. When you have seen the reality of how body and mind works, when you've seen how karma works, when you've seen how the precepts work, then to struggle against that, or to try to behave in a way that, when you've seen impermanence even, to struggle against that, it no longer makes any sense. So you go from being grasping and trying to make the thing the way you want it to be, to actually release. Because you know how the thing actually is. And you know that anything that you do to resist that is only going to lead to suffering. So some of you know this example, but I'm going to use it again because it's always a lot of fun for me. And the idea of resistance. Yeah. So many years ago, I was doing some hospital training for a year. I was a chaplain in a hospital doing some training there to become eventually a hospice chaplain. But I was in the hospital, and I was in this cohort of 8 other spiritually trained folks. And one of them was my friend Kelly. I sometimes get her name wrong. It's not Shelley, it's Kelly. And Kelly, I had said during, some kind of a sharing that one of the main reasons, if not the main reason, for resistance in our lives or for suffering in our lives is because we cannot accept impermanence. Even the impermanence of our own choices, or the impermanence of our own bodies, or the impermanence of our own minds. And Kelly came up to me after the session and she said, I don't know that that's really true. I really feel like I don't have a lot of resistance in my life. And so I said, okay, well, that's fine. Maybe just, think about it. Just set that aside until it comes up again. And some number of days later, Kelly came up to me and she said, so I get up in the morning, and I guess she just walks up to me and starts telling this story. Okay, so I get up in the morning and I get dressed, and I've heard that the forecast is for rain, but I look outside and it's a nice sunny day, and I think, I'm not going to bring my umbrella because it's a nice sunny day. And I get in my car and I head to the hospital, and I get here to the hospital and it's raining on my head. And I think about you, she says. Because even though I knew that the forecast was for rain, even though I know very clearly that the weather will change sooner or later, I wasn't willing to respond, to acknowledge that, to make the choice that corresponds to that change. I wasn't willing. So there I am in the rain without my umbrella. And I laughed so hard because what Kelly didn't know is that I myself had done that 1,000 times. When I was in college, I went to college in Florida, and oftentimes there's rain in the afternoon, even though it is a bright sunny day. But you're going to get that afternoon thunderstorm. There I would be getting soaked on my way between classes, you know. So Kelly and I had a really good laugh about it. And she is the heroine of the story, right? Because she had the courage to observe her own behavior, her own question. She had the courage to stay with it and to acknowledge the delusion that she saw, right? And to learn from that, because until she had the courage to face that little bit of delusion, then there's no possibility of change. Or, well, I wouldn't say there's no possibility, because again, change is always happening, but there's very little likelihood of an intentional change until you see it, right? So we do this all the time. We do this all the time. We resist the nature of impermanence, because sometimes it is painful. Sometimes it is hard to see, right? When we're losing a loved one, or when we are dying, or when we are having a change in our life that we didn't necessarily choose. It's one of the times, some of the times, that it can be very hard to be willing to acknowledge the truth of impermanence. But when we see it and we open that, we release that grasping, then there is the possibility of a life that responds moment by moment. That responds to what's actually real about our lives, moment by moment. And then Venerable Ananda goes on. So just to finish up a little bit on the sutta here. Venerable Ananda goes on, and he goes on to talk about 10 other forms of meditation that all have the same effect. So the other 3 concentration states, and then also the Brahma viharas, right? So loving kindness as a meditation practice, compassion as a meditation practice, empathetic joy as a meditation practice, equanimity, or you could say profound balance as a meditation practice. All of these different ways through which we can step through that door. That door of insight, that door of knowing deeply the way to peace, the way of finding the peace that is already right here and possible. So this goes on, and various other formless states of meditation. And so the Venerable Ananda gives him 11 doors to the deathless, 11 doors to the absolute peace. And then Dasama was so happy that he served everybody a great feast. So the ends of these suttas are always fun also. So it's good not to miss the end of them. Dasama, the householder, as he's called here, assembled the group of monastics, and with his own hands, he fed them a great feast, all kinds of good food, says Bhikkhu Bodhi is the translation here, and presented them with gifts of cloth, clothing, and had a dwelling built for the Venerable Ananda. So he was very, very excited, and it opened up some generosity in his heart, which is also very sweet when that happens, right? That he found the, you could say, the value of the teaching in his own life. That's what he found. So we have all kinds of good instruction around this. And the last one that I will leave you with is from Shaila Catherine. So when I was up at BCBS last month, no, because now we're in September already today, in July, I had the opportunity to go for a walk with my friend Shaila Catherine, who is a Dharma teacher, lay Dharma teacher, who's very, very well known and respected for teaching concentration practice. And she says this, she's talking about this phenomenon, this, she mentions this sutta, this chapter in her book is not about that. But it's a book she wrote quite a long time ago called Focused and Fearless by Shaila Catherine. And she says this: simply direct the energy of your accumulated concentration to realize, I'm translating samadhi, so samadhi is the word that she uses here. Simply direct the energy of your accumulated concentration to realize the true nature of all phenomena. Right, just simply do that. Right? But that is how it's described in the sutta. You focus the mind, settle down, and then you turn that attention to the myriad of phenomena. That's why we say any phenomena can wake you up. Any phenomena can be the thing that unlocks insight. Because it's not a matter of just settling the mind. Awakening is not a quiet mind. Awakening is a mind that is able to be quiet and able to be present when activity is present. The whole thing. All things clear in the here and now. So thank you very much for your attention today. That is what I wanted to share with you. So we have a little bit less than 10 minutes here for some reflections or questions, any comments on the talk or on the meditation. No, it's all abundantly clear. Y'all are just going to go off and do it, and you got it. Sharanya, yes, I see your hand up. Please unmute your mic.
Thank you, Aya. This talk is very timely because this past week I decided that I was going to practice more diligently and with more intentionality. I felt this way because my mom is sick, and I just felt some idea around it and feeling like I was not making good use of my time. And so I tried to sit down multiple times during the day. I don't think my concentration was particularly remarkable, although my mind did settle a little bit. And then I turned my attention to all of the things that were coming and going. And I think at some point, I think there must have been some boredom, but I didn't turn towards the boredom. But I thought, okay, so what now? Like, what am I doing right now, it feels like I've just reached a dead end. Um,
Mm. Mm.
and then I can't remember what happened next. Maybe I can't remember if I just stopped and moved on to something else or if I stayed. But I'm like, I feel like I'm understanding these concepts, but I'm really not having an experience of it, which is really not changing things. So I just wanted to put it out there. Maybe I just need to practice some more and understand it better before I even speak up.
Mm.
One thing.
So Sharanya, let me just respond to that for a bit, if you would. So first of all, mudita, wonderful, sadhu, that you decided that you want to, practice a little bit more and take that messenger in the form of your mother's illness, right? And really receive that skillfully and have that return to the Dhamma as a refuge. So that's absolutely beautiful, and I'm very happy for you about that. And I would say, so that moment of what now or what next, or am I getting it, or what would, you know, one thing to check in with there is about the Vedana, right? About the feeling tone of what's happening in that moment. Because oftentimes that sense of boredom or that sense of suddenly, finding a little bit of impatience or a little bit of like, so what, is because there is a neutral Vedana, a neutral
Mhm.
feeling tone to the experience. And generally speaking, not all the time, but generally speaking, our tendency is for the mind to want to slide off of neutral feeling tones, for the mind to want to ignore neutral feeling tones. Why? Because when it's neutral, it doesn't give us the opportunity to exert our ego. Oh, I like this, or I don't like this, right? It's just neutral. So that's when this kind of response can oftentimes come up. But the interesting thing, and the sort of exhortation I would give you, Sharanya, is that learning to stay present and non-judgmental about neutral feeling tone is crucial to the path, because we need to be able to persevere and allow the mind to settle in those moments of neutral feeling tone so that it will become clear enough and sharp enough for the next moments of activity, right? Because activity is always present, but if it's a neutral activity, then we want to kind of slide away from it. So hopefully that helps, and you can maybe do a little bit of observation of the feeling tones, specifically if you start to have that sense of like, so what? Okay.
Thank you. I'll try that.
Okay. You're welcome. One more, yes, comment or question? Yes, Kylie.
Do you have, like, building on that idea, because if I'm honest with myself, that neutral it's not only like it's also, there's also a part of it that's really I don't know, unpleasant. I hate to say it's unpleasant, but it's like, it's just so not, that I tend to very quickly go to some drama of some kind. And I was wondering if you have, I don't know, like is there some pithy way to sort of frame it up mentally, that could help me stay with it and be with it? I feel it. I feel that movement away from it almost. And I don't have a tool that can help me stay. I'm wondering if there's something you might offer, if that makes any sense.
Mm-hmm. Yes, I mean, so what you're talking about, it sounds like a question of the persistence, the ability to persist through that phenomena of neutral feeling tone. And I believe that it was also Madame Blanche who said, you could think about it as you are the cat waiting at the hole for the mouse to come out. You're just there with that sense of attending to this thing, even though there's nothing there, right? It's just the hole waiting for the mouse to come out. But the cat is very engaged, right? So maybe that's one sort of metaphor or one simile that might be helpful for you.
Totally,
because it
I'm a
is
huge cat person.
Yep. And it is about this quality of attending, or this quality of staying intimate, or staying curious, or staying in that that mode of wanting to receive. Yeah. So thank you for the question. And so Dana, I think your announcement first, and then Kylie's announcement, and then I will do the dedication of merits.
I just wanted to say thank you for the questions and answers. I had the same question, and so thank you. Okay. The practice of giving and receiving has been part of Buddhism since its inception. Giving to Dassanaya Buddhist Community supports our guiding teacher, Dhammadipa, the physical location at the vihara, and allows us to continue to offer Buddhist teachings in support of the awakening of all beings. Visit our donate and giving pages to offer financial, material, or volunteer supports. In addition, about once a month, we email meditation class and retreat schedules, and you can sign up to subscribe on the homepage. Thank you.
Yes, please do get the newsletter if you're not getting it already. It's always a good way to hear a little bit about what's going on in the Sangha, all the different activities. In fact, I forgot to mention actually that there will be a precept ceremony, a Bodhisattva precept ceremony on November 24th with Jesse, who's here, and also with Todd. So that's always a big, joyful celebration. We say all the Bodhisattvas rejoice when a new person takes their Bodhisattva vows. Okay, Kylie.
Yeah, thank you. That is really exciting. Also, I just wanted to let you all know that you can look in your mailboxes. Coming on Thursday, you'll be getting an invitation to the autumn gathering on Saturday, October 5th. And that is going to be online and in person at the vihara. So you can come. If you can come in person, that's amazing. We have people coming from different places, staying here in the area. And then if you want to stay at home, you can come online, 10:30 Eastern, which I think is like 4:30 Central European, maybe 7:30 Pacific, 9:30 Mexico. So just really excited for that. And if you haven't heard, it's Dhammadipa's, it's going to be her 60th birthday. So we're going to really enjoy having a birthday party for her in conjunction with that autumn gathering. So speaking of great feasts, like the one that was given for the Buddha, we're hoping to do the same, and we'll be looking for participation and engagement. But the RSVP will be coming on Thursday, so you can look for that if you are interested in attending. So yeah, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Yes, so that's for everyone who is signed up for the newsletter. If you're not signed up for the newsletter, but you're still interested in coming to the gathering, everyone's welcome, and you can just find information about it on the calendar on the homepage. So yes, much gratitude to everyone who is supporting the Sangha with your presence, with your offerings, with your practice and commitment. And we want to dedicate the merits of our practice today to the well-being and freedom from suffering of all beings, known and unknown, seen and unseen. May beings in all the realms be released from mental suffering, be released from physical suffering. May beings realize wisdom and compassion by the power of the Buddhas, the Dhamma, and the Sangha. And each one's efforts, may all beings be free. All right, friends, good to see you.